What's up, guys? It's Mike for Sim Racing 604. Welcome back to Assetto Corsa Competizione and Build 4. This is my first video for Build 4. So Build 4 most notably brought us Hungaroring for a track and the Ferrari 488 GT3, which you are on board now in VR. So the intent of this video is sort of in three parts. One, I want to showcase the car, the 488 GT3, which is fantastic. Two, I want to show off the improvements to VR. And three, we're going to be talking about the improvements to the handling of the car. And that last one is a big one. It's a really big one. So again, just want to do this in VR. We'll get going here on the track and just talk a little bit. So previously, if you've seen any videos I've done on ACC, I talked about the VR and how I usually don't record ACC in VR. The reason being is the frame rate has not been good. I was getting sort of 30 frames a second and you know, possibly even worse than that if I have a full field. Now, I haven't done a lot of testing to another full field or, you know, single player racing or anything like that, but just for hot lapping, which is what I've tested in VR so far, there are huge improvements. So I was previously, again, hanging around 30 frames a second. Now I can get about 45 frames a second sustained, which the Oculus can then upscale to 90. So it looks really good in VR, and I'm happy with how things are progressing for sure. So the second thing I want to talk about is this Ferrari 488 GT3, and as you can hear in the background, the sounds are really great. And I watched Chris Hayes' video of the Build 4 of Assetto Corsa Competizione, and he was talking about how the sounds had improved so much, and I could not agree more. So when we go back to AC1, I actually really enjoyed how the Ferrari GT3 handled in that game, but unfortunately I never really got on with the sound. So what I ended up doing was using a Fonseca mod. Now thank goodness Fonseca exists, because his work, or his team's work, brought a massive improvement to it, but it's nice to have it stock here in Assetto Corsa Competizione, and you know, giving us the ability to enjoy a real low rumbling sound and great backfiring sounds when you're downshifting, braking into corners, that kind of thing. And of course those internal pings, knocks, scratches that Assetto Corsa Competizione does so well. So sound aside, it looks great. I'll show you guys some replay footage a little bit later. And yeah, it's great to look at. I mean, how much does a sim racing car, how much do the visuals of a car really matter? Not so much. You're going for overall visuals, something that ACC also does well. And then in terms of handling, now, my knee-jerk reaction with this car was to say that it is my favorite car in ACC so far, and I believe that is true, but we'll circle back to that in a second. But one of the reasons was it felt so stable. By comparison to the other cars, I was able to push a little bit faster than I was able to push in previous builds, but I think that's stemming from the new tire flex improvements that Kunos has made. And what I did was I tested the Huracan GT3, and we'll test that again in a little bit. But I was noticing that across the board, the cars are handling better, and it was sort of a footnote. They didn't really spend too much time talking about it. Kunos didn't. I'm guessing it's because it's still nowhere near its final form. But I am really enjoying how they have improved the handling characteristics of the cars. So you'll notice that I can be a lot more aggressive with the curves. Previously, coming through the second half of Schumacher S like that may have been death. It was a constant fight to kind of keep the rear end of the car under control. Of course, with some setup work, you could tune that down a bit, but what I find now is you can push a lot harder, and it feels like it's getting a lot closer to the feeling of AC1, and I think they'll surpass it. So previously, I had sort of come up with the theory that Assetto Corsa Competizione in its early access build feels a little bit like Race Room. I find it has some similar handling characteristics, and particularly the way the back end of the car behaves, I find is similar to Race Room. Now, with this build and the tire flex improvements, I find that it's probably Assetto Corsa level plus a little bit. I think it's a little bit better than Assetto Corsa? Maybe not. I don't know. I haven't done enough testing. The sample group is too small, of course. I've only had this for about a day now. But I think I probably am coming to enjoy the handling characteristics. Not necessarily the force feedback yet, but just the handling characteristics of the cars, the way they bounce off curbs in this build 4. Seems like it's an improvement on AC1. And again, I'll have to do more testing with that, but I'm really liking the work that Kunos has done here, and I think they're off to a good start with that. So we'll wrap this lap up, guys, and then we'll jump into Huracan GT3 and just talk a bit more about this. But while I'm in the 488 GT3, I want to sort of tell you why I think it's my favorite car. I think the handling is probably more neutral than any car we've got so far in ACC. And that's a good thing for me. For me, as somebody who doesn't really like to spend a lot of time with tunes, I'll generally do a tiny bit of tuning work, but I'm by no means or setup work, I should say, but I'm by no means a setup guru or anything like that. So it's hard for me to drastically make changes to a car. So the stock setup with this, and I'm running the safe setup here, hence the reason my lap times aren't that great. The stock setup feels very, very stable. It feels good. Again, it kind of goes back to the improvements in handling of the cars, but I think overall, I think the car just feels very neutral, feels more nimble, I think, than certainly the M6 GT3 or the Bentley. My second favorite, I would have to say, is the Huracan, but it tends to understeer a bit until you work with the setup. But this car feels, again, very neutral and by comparison, very nimble. And I think they've done some great work with balance of performance. My lap times across the board seem very, very stable. Alright, so as we round the corner here, we will jump into the Huracan GT3 and talk a little bit more about the handling improvements. Alright guys, so back in the pits here, I have changed the morning time of day to the night. I went from 8 AM to 8 PM, and you can see it's a bit more, there's definitely a stutter to the frame rate now in VR here, so I think probably the lighting at the AM time was doing a lot more for the VR than I thought it would. So it's possibly linked to the time of day, it could be linked to the car, but definitely a worse frame rate here in the Huracan GT3 than I was having in the 488 GT3. But overall, guys, it's so great to see the improvements in VR. It was, a shame that we got VR. I think it was the last build. Was it build 3 that we got VR? Yeah, it was. And right away, me and a whole bunch of other VR users jumped into it and said, yeah, that was fun, let's never do that again. But great to see that they have made improvements here. I have seen some posts from people running like 2080 cards and things like that who are getting bad frame rates still. And yeah, I don't know what to say. By no means is it perfect. I get a lot better frame rates, particularly in Race Room and R Factor 2, also Assetto Corsa. But yeah, this has definitely made some great strides, and I think we're still probably 6 months off the full release of this title. So I think it's great to see the progress that Kunos has made. And final point, guys, I just want to spend a few more minutes talking about this handling improvement. So once again, in this Huracan GT3, I was using these laps as kind of a control, just to see how, if the handling has improved across the board with all of the cars, and I believe it has. So you can see I'm way more aggressive on the curbing, and I'm not spitting out. And there's a few times where I understeer and to compensate, I kind of slow down and end up losing traction in the rear, and I'm able to catch it. I know that previous builds, it was very, very difficult to catch slides, and I would say it's still on the more difficult end of the sim racing spectrum to catch slides here in ACC, but catching far more slides now, which is great. So again, just blown away here by the fact that Kunos has made these improvements. They're listening to us, and they haven't made a big stink out of it. And I think the reason they haven't, again, is because I think in its final form, I think they probably have a vision. It's probably already being tested out, but they're just slowly leaking it out to us bit by bit in early access here. And yeah, looking for feedback from us, and my feedback is you guys are definitely on the right track. I think things are feeling a lot better in terms of the handling of the cars. A lot of work still to do on the force feedback, if I'm being honest. I would like to see some smoothing added very, very soon, because one thing with this direct drive wheel is these curbs are very, very abrupt. But overall, really liking things. So that's pretty much going to wrap things up, guys. We'll finish up this lap and just call it a day, but very happy with this build 4. I really like the VR improvements. Nice to see a smooth frame rate for the first time in ACC and VR. Well, I guess it's only the second build, but you know what I'm saying. Nice to see those improvements. The 488 GT3, a fantastic GT3 car. So far my favorite of the pack. I still got to retest the M6 and retest the Bentley, but I do prefer the 488 over the Huracan, even though the Huracan was my previous favorite. So we'll see where things land with that, guys, but the 488 definitely a great addition, at least until we have the Audi. Come on, Audi. And yeah, the handling, I can't say enough good things about the handling and being able to take curbs a lot more aggressively now, and just the way the car kind of bounces around off those heavy curbs. Great to see. Nicely done, Kunos. Keep up the great work. Keep listening to us, fans. Let me know, please, in the comments, what are you running? What's your favorite car? What's your favorite track so far in ACC? One more slam on the brakes, guys, because that's one thing I did want to mention here as we come down the hill. Slamming the brakes here, you can just go full on, just slam the brakes as hard as you want, and the car now maintains traction. It's not like before where you would lose the rear end. So great to see that the ABS function is working a bit more stable now. Thanks, guys, so much for watching. Take a look at these replays, and we will see you next time.